Welcome to BookHuddle. I'm your host, Karen Reader with Readgab. Today, our guest is Meg Eden Kuyatt. She is the author of this incredible novel in verse. It is called The Girl on the Walls, and I love it because I've just loved novels in verse, but I also love spooky middle grade, and we've got neurodiversity going on, and just, there's got so much in it. So we're gonna have a fun conversation today. But first, I want to give Meg a second. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Hi, so I'm Meg Eden Kuyatt, and as Karen mentioned, I'm the author of The Girl on the Walls, which just came out. And before that, the Schneider Family Book Award honor title, Good Difference. When I'm not being an author, parts of my identity are that I'm a teacher of creative writing,
Nice.
I'm autistic, and I'm a follower of Christ.
Nice. Very nice. I love to do an author icebreaker. And so the book that we're going to base it on today is Allie Millington's books. She writes about these inanimate objects like a building and a typewriter, Once for Yes, and oh gosh, Once for Yes, and
Oh,
Olive Betty. And they're just these fantastic books. And so I often think about what would I have a conversation with if it could communicate back? What would you have a conversation with, Meg?
I love this question. It would definitely be something from an antique store, probably an old
Nice.
photo, or maybe it would even be like the walls of my childhood home. I love
Okay.
old things and what stories are in them. So, because there's always that phrase of like, if walls could talk, and I've always been like,
Yes.
oh, I want literally to know what the walls would say if they could talk. So,
Yes. Oh, right. I just love it. And I love the emotion of it that she puts into the books, that she can get me crying over a building and a typewriter. And so
brilliant.
there's just so much emotion, like, or my glasses or my pens, these everyday objects, right?
Yes.
All right. So Meg, tell us about your brilliant work, The Girl in the Walls. What is this about?
So The Girl in the Walls is about V, who loves that she's different and quirky and artistic, but she's stuck with her nemesis for the summer, who is her grandma JoJo, who is everything that seems to be her total opposite. She only cares about her clean carpets and what people think of her and how she looks. So V's miserable, stuck at JoJo's house until she finds a ghost in her grandmother's walls. And that ghost invites her to prank this difficult grandmother, and it starts out innocent, seemingly, and harmless, but the pranks become more and more dangerous till V has to decide, what do I do with this ghost? What does this ghost really want?
Right.
And figuring out what's really going on with her family.
Yeah. Oh, and and I love it. Like, and as I'm reading, I'm trying to figure out, like, is this really happening or is this in her mind, And like throughout, like there's this gross, like, stuff coming through as well. And I'm like, is this all in her head? And there's, again, like I was saying about emotion, the way that authors, so you do it through the power of verse, with less words, it's still like, wow, the emotion that can be felt. And I'm like, ooh, I'm getting spooked out. And I'm also like trying to figure out this adventure and wonder here. And so what inspired you to do this? That first of all, Good Different is that's not novel in verse, right? I haven't read that one.
It
Heard
is.
a lot
It's in
about it.
verse as
Oh, it is
well.
in verse.
Yeah.
Okay. So you established prior that you're going to be a writer of novel in verse? Is that why you went with it again with The Girl in the Walls?
Yeah, it's a good question. Stories tend to tell me if they're in verse or not. A
Okay.
character says, "This is who I am and this is how I talk." But also, Scholastic's been really supportive of me doing verse, and I really enjoy it.
Nice.
My background is as a poet, so I have an MFA in poetry, and
Nice.
so I think that there's kind of that musical theater saying that when the emotions get too big for speaking, you sing, and too big for singing, then you dance. And I feel that way about poetry. I feel like it's just the place for emotion. So The Girl on the Walls was inspired by seeing something upsetting happen to someone that I care about. And those
Right.
feelings were so big. Like, how could I write it in prose? It just had to come out in poetry for me.
Yes, nice. So, and then what about the storyline? What inspired this storyline? This is personal for you, right? Because you are autistic and our character here is she also ADHD? She's just autistic.
So it's a good question because those lines are so blurred. I mean, I
Right? And
wouldn't be
often
shocked.
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, so she could have, I wouldn't be shocked if she was ADHD. She shows
Yeah.
some ADHD signs too. In my head, she's at least autistic, but
Okay. But okay, so it's not established, but what inspired the storyline? But to make it spooky and things.
So it started with that upsetting experience of seeing someone I cared about being treated in a way that really got at my inner child and the ways that I felt insecure and hurt. And so I started trying to write about it literally, like good different, of this is what happened. And that was not fun. That was just awful and
Yeah.
icky. And so sometimes when there's really hard material, you need something fantastical to lift it up, to give you
Nice.
like Emily Dickinson, like to tell it slant. And so I asked lots of what ifs, like what if there was like a younger version of the grandmother in the walls that she met and she
Ooh,
got to know,
yes.
like this time traveling thing. But then it became a ghost.
Yeah.
And I can't explain the process. You just try what ifs and you see what clicks. And I think a ghost allowed for a lot of metaphoric images for the material. I think it just made sense for what the story needed. And then that allowed me to lean into the scary. And the
Yes.
real horrors are often real world horrors, but you
Right.
can use
Yes.
magic to kind of make them a little bit more palatable for us to actually digest and process.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, especially when we're working with kids, because we've got like real world stuff going on with her cousin, right? And then the grandma, there's so much tension there. And so it does make it a little easier to handle if you're like, you're also dealing with a spooky book here. So it's like, okay, I can handle this real world overwhelming because I'm dealing with a spooky book.
Exactly.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I like it. I like it. So, neurodiversity. I've heard so much about Good Different, and I'm sorry I haven't read it. That's the whole point of Good Different, is right? Is an autistic individual who it's good, it's empowering to be different, right? And so you were from experience. Why is it important for people to have these books of neurodiversity?
Well, as a kid that grew up undiagnosed, I think you're going to have challenges inherently if you're neurodivergent, and those challenges might look different. But when you encounter those challenges without a diagnosis or an explanation or a mirror to see someone like you,
Right,
it's easy to internalize and say, well, then it's my fault. I need to try harder. I'm not doing something right. I'm the problem. But if we have these mirrors where kids can see, oh, other people have
right.
sensitivities and challenges, and that's okay. And there's tools to help you, and it's okay to ask for help. Then hopefully we can all work towards not internalizing as much, which is not constructive. It's not constructive for me to just go, I'm a terrible person because I
Right.
have hearing sensitivity. Like that just doesn't fix anything. So I think it helps create empathy for people that aren't neurodivergent, to maybe stop just going, oh, you're just sensitive and you just need to toughen up. And for
Yes.
those kids that need that mirror to go, oh, there's someone like me and there's tools that can help, and a constructive way forward.
Yes. And I love that there's a myriad of books coming out now, right? Because and your books are so different, I'm guessing, from each other, right? Because one thing about the spectrum is that it's just you can't even think of it in a line, right? You got to think of it more like a plane because people try to put in a box because that's how our brains work. We want a beginning, we want an end, we want things to fit into nice little categories. And the spectrum's just so vast. We need to see so many different examples of neurodiversity because there's just not one way to explain it. I don't know. I hate love the blue Halloween buckets. That at Halloween, have you seen those? That you're supposed to know they're autistic if you see a blue, the orange pumpkin buckets.
Oh,
If you
okay.
see a blue one, you're supposed to know they're autistic and be kind and understanding because they might grab too much candy or this, and they might forget to be verbal or aren't able to. And I was like, well, that's great. I'm glad that we're trying. Like, so that's the love-hate relationship. I'm glad that we're seeing a need. But then the hate part of it is like, what if we were just kind anyways?
Right.
What if we just gave people the benefit of the doubt and we didn't need to know a diagnosis?
Right.
So I don't know, just seeing all these different things because I feel like neurodiversity is becoming typical, the more that we realize about it, that it's like, oh, there's neurotypical and there's neurodiversity. But I'm like, there's so many things of neurodiversity that we're seeing it everywhere that you need to be it's just common.
Well,
Like,
there is a lot of undiagnosed neurodivergence, and I think it's a lot more common than we
yes,
think. But ironically, it feels like in a lot of ways, we're becoming less full of grace, like you're saying, towards
yes,
one another and towards neurodivergence, like especially in the workplace as adults. Like it just feels like it's harder and harder that a lot of people get fired for asking for accommodations that are often very small things. So it's this weird world where it's like we're learning more
yeah,
and so we're talking about it more, and that's so good. But then also, like, our behavior is not exhibiting kindness. And I don't understand or know how to reconcile with this strangeness, which I think goes back to the why do these books matter? Because I think not just saying it exists, but like, this is what it feels like. This is what's hard about it. This is how we can help one another. Like, the hope is that these books can open conversation so we can keep doing better.
right. And that that there's the relative, like the cousin, and without giving spoilers, that like are saying to my son, it doesn't go away as an adult. It's not something you get, cured of. Oh, I'm not neurodiverse anymore. Like
Right.
some people have either learned to mask very well, or they've just also figured out their ways to be successful and happy with it. And
Or
so,
not, because a lot of us don't necessarily find that like that's the
yeah,
ideal, right? That we figure
yeah,
out how to work with this. But yeah, I think the generational aspect's a big part of this book that
yes,
different generations have handled. This stuff has always existed. They've all
right,
handled it differently in some ways, in harmful ways that then we're carrying to the next generation. So how, as kids, can can the kids like stop some of these harmful patterns because
right.
the opportunity we don't have to keep doing things the wrong way.
Yes, absolutely. We could just stop.
Right.
And that's when it does start, right? That as children, because if this becomes something so common for them that when they grow up and then they are the boss, then it's less likely to be an issue because this has been common for them throughout their childhood. And so hopefully we're changing things going forward. So, what about emotions? The emotions are so powerful in the book, and the ghost is like encouraging her. Like, she's like, we're going to use these emotions and we're going to get even and play these pranks. And the things that seem, harmless at first that they become so much more, right? So, what do you feel are ways to handle emotions?
Yeah, I think that that's a big idea that was really important to me in the book is kind of a nuanced sense of emotions. That emotions are important. They can be like fire alarms that can say like especially anger, like that something's wrong. Like we need emotions, artists, we need them to create good things, but also they're not always reliable narrators. Sometimes we feel something and it's not necessarily true. It might be what we're perceiving of a situation. So if we let our feelings fully pilot a situation, that can be dangerous because we do need to remind ourselves, well, okay, what's true? I feel this, but also what are some other aspects of the situation I need to know? So I really wanted to encourage kids of acknowledge your feelings, make room for your feelings, use your feelings in good ways, but also be careful of letting them completely pilot your life, which is what the
Right.
ghost wants you to do, because I think that's dangerous. And I think that's often what we're unintentionally, well-meaningly, sometimes that's what the messaging we give says. And I think that it's exhausting. It's exhausting for our emotions to pilot.
Yes.
So I want to find a healthy space for my emotions as an artist. I think there's so many great ways of writing poems about what you
Yes.
feel, making art. So she discovers assemblage, which is the art of taking things and creating like interactive 3D collages.
Yes.
So that's an art that anyone can make, whether you feel like, oh, I'm not very artsy or not, like anyone can do that. Finding a way to channel that for good, I think, is really important.
Do you know what I love? What you said is because I'm always like, emotions are important, emotions are valid, but what they caused you to think might not be true. And because I think I forget that when I'm talking to kids, whether from a teacher perspective or from a parent, because I'm like, yes, feel your emotions. Let's give you the opportunity to feel your emotions. Let's talk about where you're feeling them. Are you feeling it in your body, like in the heart or in the tummy or in the head? Are your muscles clenching up? And I'm so often talking about the emotions, I forget to talk about, and then what is it that emotion causing you to think? And then let's break it down. Is that really true? Because I feel like I put those in two separate things when I talk about them. I put the thoughts in a thing and we'll talk about the thoughts and are they true and da 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 da, da, and I put the emotions in one, but they are so overlapping that we need to work with them together. Maybe not in the moment that we're fiery and
Right.
things.
Maybe we take a step back afterwards, like you said, do all that stuff with the body inventory. But then afterwards, what is it that I believe based on this situation? Because
Right?
sometimes when we're angry, like I think this happens, especially when we have fights, I'm frustrated that this person hurt me. But then what we're thinking is that person's terrible. I
Right.
hate that person. And there's spaces for that person's abusive or that person's unsafe. And I want to acknowledge that. But sometimes we let the feeling overwhelm where it's a person we love and we know that person loves us, but we're hurt and we're upset and we let that pilot instead of saying, I'm allowed to be hurt. This thing hurt me, and that's true. But also maybe that person, I don't need to hate them. I don't need to cut them out of my life necessarily. I
Right.
need to allow both of those things to exist because the people we love do hurt us. Those things
Yeah.
do have to sometimes coexist. And if we let every single hurt mean we're going to cancel somebody out of our lives, that's a little dangerous to do. Again, there's times for canceling, there's
Yes.
times for leaving a situation, but I think sometimes we allow it to take that instinct to take over. And so it needs a little bit more nuance sometimes.
Right. And I think it might help me be more forgiving to other people when I think about it like that, that I was mean to myself when I was upset. I because of emotions, I was too hard on myself. And I mean, who hasn't had that point in their lives, right? The emotion or something happened, it caused you to think and believe something wrong. And then are you going to hate yourself forever? You're not going to cancel yourself, your relationship with yourself, right? Like it's going to work forward. And I think that's powerful to be like, okay, if I can forgive myself and reconcile things personally, because that's a big one, right? And then maybe I can with that teacher, with because she's got a teacher that she and me needs to work things through. And that really affected her, how a teacher treated her and the things that were said. And so, but it goes so much deeper than just teachers and how they've treated her for being autistic, but it's family members too. And so, yeah, to be able to move forward, what do you think are first steps in moving forward for bridging those relationships that have been hurt?
Oh, it's a great question, and it might look different for the different relationships. Like I think in this story, we see a possible way forward of how she responds to JoJo
Right.
and the messiness that's there, but also maybe are there some things worth saving? And how do I hold both of those? So I think the story shows a possibility there, even with Kat a little bit, which,
Hmm.
like you said, is another family member that things get a little messy with. But maybe there's something worth saving. Now, with the teacher, maybe there's an opportunity to talk with that teacher, to, fight for accommodations if appropriate. Or maybe it's just, I don't need to interact with that teacher. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like that. Maybe I find a different teacher because I think, especially with the arts and mentorship, you need to find the people that will build you up, who
Yes.
will
Those
challenge you.
helpers in the world. Yes.
Right. You need people that will challenge and push you to try different things. But sometimes somebody is not, they're disparaging more than
Right.
encouraging. And maybe you say, this is not profitable. And so maybe in that situation for that art teacher, that's not the right art teacher for her. And I think that's totally okay to go, you know what? We tried it with that person and that was not a great fit. We're going to find a different teacher.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
Yeah, because yeah, so much. Like, I think of it with therapy that, and, just because you've not had a good situation with a therapist doesn't mean therapists are bad. Like, it's so important to have somebody you connect with. So it can be that way with teachers. And maybe you're stuck with that teacher for the school year. So it's like, okay, I'm going to figure out how, if I cannot get out of this teacher's class, I might just have to deal with it for this school year, but I'm going to know there's somebody else out there that will encourage me. And I'm going to find the ways to move forward with my passion. And so, yeah, that can be hard, especially as a child. The school year feels so long, right? Like
Yes.
that's just the world. Like that whole school year, especially when you're that young, if you're like you're like 10, you're like, this is a tenth of my life. This is getting through this year.
Well, and one disparaging message, I think it hurts enough as an adult, but maybe even more so, we carry that stuff as a kid and we continue to carry it. So those moments can have a lot of weight, even if to the adult, maybe it was, like, oh, I just said this thing and I really didn't even mean it that way.
Right. Right. And so it's such a hard balance, right? To figure out moving on or forgiving somebody else. But when there was such a powerful hurt, how can we do that? And such powerful misunderstandings. Yeah, weighing that, is it worth it? And how do I move forward? And do I be forgiving? Because it's like, okay, well, if they're neurodiverse, do I need to be like, okay, I've got to understand that this is how they're coping with their own neurodiversity, and I need to give grace to them, but I need grace given for my neurodiversity and my emotions and struggles. It's such a wow, it's like such a battle to have to do all these things.
And I think you can extend grace and forgive while still setting boundaries. I think you can say,
Yes.
you know what, that person, they're dealing with their own thing. Maybe I don't get it, but maybe we're just not really super compatible. And I can, be like,
Yeah.
you know, you're forgiven, but maybe we don't keep trying to mesh. And actually, the next book that's coming out is a sequel or a companion novel to Good Different.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge Selah has to deal with. She goes to summer camp for the first time, and she has a difficult roommate friendship thing. And there's some decisions of, when do you step away from something?
Right.
When you can do that without being bitter and, but still taking care of yourself as necessary. Like you said, I think there's balance. I think there's some tension in these things that there's not an easy insto answer for every situation, but hopefully we're all striving to grow as people, but also know like when we're hitting a wall and when maybe we need a different situation than the one we're in.
Right, right. And I think as adults, we're working with, because the listeners are not the children of this podcast, actually. So it's actually the adults that I'm trying to say, hey, use this book. And I'm hoping adults will be the ones to also read it. Because it's so powerful for them to know what they're giving to the child and how to make it a great tool or read it along with them. But we're like, okay, we're going to teach boundaries. Okay, we're going to teach forgiveness for self and forgiveness for others. Okay, we're going to teach how to work with emotion and how to handle thoughts and how to find the helper. Another book that I love. Have you read The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez? It's
No,
another one that's a neurodiverse student that is in a verse as well. And so we're like, okay, we're going to do all these things. And it was a big one about the different helpers and how to advocate for self. And so we're going along and we're like, wow, we've got a lot to teach and let's give it all to this individual child at once. We can't do that. Right? Absolutely. We cannot do that. So let's speak to the adults. What would you recommend? You've got a neurodiverse student, a neurodiverse child in your household. What do you say? How do you start if you're like, it's time to be compassionate? What do you start with your relationship?
I think asking questions is a great place to start because I think as adults, we can look at a child's behavior and assume a bad attitude, assume defiance. And not that a kid can always articulate why they do a thing or whatever, but asking questions invites them to be a participant as opposed to imposing and assuming this is their attitude. Because already as kids, we're so powerless. Like I just remember being a kid and there's so little you can control. And then people assume your attitude. It's just like the
Yeah.
worst.
Grow
So
up. Come on. Come on. What's the matter with you?
right. Or, I had my parents are wonderful, but, I have hearing comprehension issues. And so my mom would ask me to do a thing and I would do the opposite.
Mm.
Legitimately, my interpretation broke in the process.
Oh,
And my mom
man.
thought I was just being defiant.
Right.
And and it was hurtful because it's like, well, don't I have a track record? Like
Right.
trying
Right.
to do the right thing. So, but I think it's easy to do that as an adult. So, like, I get
Yes.
why that happens. So, I think if when you encounter a situation where a child does something that you don't expect, asking questions, inviting them to give a case, inviting them to be a participant in that, to work together with them. And trying to make some room for benefit of the doubt, you have to know your kid that you're engaging with and the track record of that kid. But I think if you see a behavior you don't expect, there's probably a reason that it's there, and
Right.
whether that's purely defiance, it's likely it's a little bit more nuanced that there's some sort of sensory need or some sort of situation that they're trying to respond to a feeling powerless,
Yeah.
and that's
Whether
how.
neurodiverse or not, right?
Right. Oh, there's rejection sensitivity dysphoria for neurodivergent kids, where, the same rejection that for a neurotypical kid is going to feel like a million needles on them and the end of the world. And understanding those things, going in with that possibility, that may make room for that kid to be able to learn how to work through this and giving
Right.
them tools as opposed to teaching them to be powerless, which is
Right.
going to invite more destructive behavior, honestly, because then what do we do when we feel like there's no point or that we have
Right.
no say in
We're
this?
gonna give up.
Right, or become embittered. And so
Hmm.
I think trying to,
Do the opposite. Yeah.
right, stop that trend from happening, I think is the best that we can do.
So I love that you say the first thing to start with is the conversations, is the asking questions. And I realize when I have authors on here and we're talking about things that because some of them will be like, well, clearly I'm not, a psychologist or da da da. And I'm like, I know. I'm just, where are you coming from? Let's talk. And so I love that. You're bringing your own personal experience and you're bringing what you're seeing. And then it's like, there's all these solutions that an adult can start with, but really, before you decide, okay, am I going to work on this? Am I going to work on this? Am I going to work on this? Am I going to find the solution? You can't find a solution if you don't talk to them first.
Right. And I think also on that note, asking questions can make something less aggressive too. So as an
Right,
educator, I might have a kid in the classroom with earbuds on.
right,
And my instinct is to go, take those out. You're being rude.
right,
But I tried once of going to that student and asking, are you using those for accessibility needs? Is there something I'm missing from this? And
right,
the kid went, no. And I said, okay, could you take them out then? And I think that kid was I got a sense from how he responded that he was more receptive than if I had just gone, take that out. So
right,
if there's ways that we can, instead of, especially thinking of neurodivergent kids, especially ADHD kids, who are way more likely to get a lot more negative messaging of don't do this, don't
right.
climb on that, don't put that in your mouth. If we can frame it in a more positive, participatory way, I think the kids are probably gonna be more receptive than being
Yes.
they can't do.
Yes, because you've just invited them. You know what I mean? You've just engaged with them rather than full on teacher mode of, and it's so easy to be like, you know what? I've got a teacher that I've got so much going on. It's so quicker to say, just do a quick point or even a visual and be like, earbuds out. And then to keep teaching your lesson because then you don't have to stop teaching your lesson. But how much more time did it really take you to go over and say to the student, is there something I'm not seeing about this? And it was probably met a whole lot better, right? Than him getting mad and being like, "Arr, arr, arr," but then like,
And I'm not perfect at this, there's times
right. Well,
I'll
of
get
course,
really upset
right?
at students. So I don't want to say that, but I do want to share that when I've tried that, I have found that more successful. So I would love to keep growing in that area and keep trying to
Of
do that.
course. And that's how we all do it, right? That we're hoping that it's a gradual thing, one day at a time, that as we engage and we bring them, because it's so easy to be like, I'm the adult, I'm the teacher, you are the student. But they're so much more likely to grow and engage and be respectful to us if we're like, okay, what's going on? Tell me. How do we move forward? Because I can't know how to help them until I've talked to them really. I might think I do. I can sit and meet with a whole team of people and we can talk about the best way to help this student and we can brainstorm ideas. But if we've never included the child, I don't think that we're really going to know the best ideas.
Right. Agreed.
So that's so beautiful. What are your other thoughts of what you love about the girl on the walls that you want to get out there with the world?
I think we covered it. I think it's unusual in that intersection of neurodivergence, verse, and horror. So I think there's a lot of entrances for that material
Yeah.
depending on a kid or adult's reading interests. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the cover. Like it just totally,
Uh-huh.
because before I even read it, I think I saw it on one of Colby Sharp's when he was introducing them, and I was just like, yeah, it just spooks you right out. I didn't even know it was a novel in verse until like I heard him talk about it. But doesn't it? It just draws you in because she's just like she's holding a doll, and dolls can be creepy too. It just leads to so much.
When I love that, I do is like a spooky writing workshop
Uh-huh.
kids and multi-session or one time, and I'll start with showing spooky covers, including this one. And the way kids are storytellers naturally, if they think, oh well, I think what's going to happen in the story is this, and the
Yeah.
doll's cursed, and she has her dead twin sister or whatever, and it's
Nice.
like kids are such natural storytellers, and I love that. So often at school visits, it'll be question time, and it won't be a question. They'll just raise their hand and be like, I think this is what happens in the book, and I love that. I
Yeah.
love I think Scholastic has been very good to me with my covers so far. Really.
Yeah. They're gorgeous. They're perfect. So tell us about you touched on it a little bit about what's next. It's going to be a companion to Good Different. When is it coming out? What else can you tell us about it? Do you have a title that you can share yet?
Yeah, so it's called Perfect Enough. It's aimed for June of next year.
Nice.
Hopefully there'll be a cover soon. I got to see an early sketch and I
Ooh,
really love it.
nice.
Um, and so yeah, it's Selah going to summer camp, to writers camp,
So, and
and
she's the main character in Good Different. But you won't, it's a companion in that it doesn't have to be read in a specific order.
exactly. So the goal is you could have not read Good Different and you could read this and it would still make sense. You
Okay.
wouldn't miss anything. But they build off each other nicely. So
Okay.
I think there's like I tried to write this book originally as its own story and
Mhm.
it kept petering out. And I think I realized at some point, oh, it's not working because it's Selah and I'm trying to rewrite Selah
Right,
basically.
right. I've got
So
she's already a character in the world.
right. So it just makes sense that way. But yes, you can read it on its own. And a character that was a very minor character be in the first book becomes a very major
Oh,
character.
cool. I love getting to know more about somebody that we're already familiar with.
Yes. And you see a new side of him. So I think
That's neat.
that's really exciting. And I think it will be another door for neurodivergence because he's ADHD. So
Oh,
now we
neat.
have the autistic Selah and ADHD Ezra having to try to figure out how to work together. And that's not always easy. So I think it's a
Right.
fun challenge.
Right. Oh, I like that because that gives us, that empathy and then also those skills of working together and then summer camp, you said, right? Oh, that's cool because that's perfect. Right at June when kids are ready for summer. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Is it novel and verse as well, right? What do you hope that overall children are getting from these different books that you're putting out?
I think a lot of the things we talked about, empathy is huge. I think it's so funny. The more information we have, it feels like the less empathy we have towards one another. We're busy. We jump to drawing conclusions right away. And there's a lot of awful things in the world. So it makes sense in some ways. But I think I would invite these stories to have us maybe take a step back to slow down a little bit when we interact with people, ask questions if somebody's different than us, well, why are they doing this thing that surprises me or upsets me? Could there be more to the story than I expect?
Right?
And so for neurodivergent kids, I hope that that can help them feel seen.
Yes.
But for neurotypical kids, for them to maybe have a little bit more understanding, and neurotypical adults, because I think kids can
Yeah.
maybe sometimes be more understanding than adults because we have
Right.
more history, right? We're carrying more of what we've been taught, maybe misbeliefs that we have. It's easier for us to maybe be harsh on kids that act in a way we don't expect. But I invite these books to make us think about the why, to ask questions, and to show compassion.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for all that you've done writing those books. Can you share with us a book that has impacted you?
Well, I've got a lot of books I could say for this, but my most recent favorite probably is Marcella Pixley's Neshama, which is also a novel and verse about a
Okay.
ghost girl.
Oh, is it? I haven't heard of this at all.
Oh, go check it out. It's beautiful, and it's so interesting how you can have two authors that have certain aspects that sound really similar,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
totally different approach. We have similar themes that we address, but she does it in such a different way, and I was just really hooked. There's also ideas of family,
Neat.
of dealing with feelings in a healthy way, of forgiveness and healing. But it's gorgeous. It's one of those books that made me angry. I didn't write it, so
I
um,
like that. It
those are
made
my
me angry.
favorite
I didn't
books.
write it.
So yeah, I definitely recommend it for all ages, for kids and adults. Yeah.
Beautiful. Tell me the title again.
Neshama.
Neshama. Is that the character's name?
No,
What is
it's
Neshama?
it's like a Jewish word for spirit, I believe.
Oh,
There's meaning behind the word that's really beautiful, but I'm going to butcher it if I try to
Oh,
explain
okay.
it.
Okay, so we've got so many things going on there. Cool. Cool. All right. I am going to look that up and I'll find out the spelling and include it in the description for everybody because I'm sure I could definitely botch that. Often when I hear things, I'm like, that's actually my thing. For we have this all the time, me and my husband. So my immediate response now is, that's what I said. And it drives him a little bit nuts because he's like, no, it isn't. And you know it isn't. But it's just like his mom's name is I'll try to say them different. But to me, they sound the same. So Lara. And I'm like, they sound the same to me. Like I don't hear rhythm. I don't hear like differences in accent a lot of times. And and so I butchered spellings. I learned to read not by phonetics, but whole language. And so I
Oh,
remember in Harry Potter, I used to say Professor Snap, and my sister would be like, no, it's Snape. And I was like, well, how do you know? It's a name. And she's like, because the E comes after the P, so the A says its name. And I was like, that's a thing. I was in college, Meg, and I was saying, that's a thing. I was in college getting my elementary education degree, and I hadn't even learned yet
that
that,
is not your fault. That is the whole language cult's fault.
right?
Not that I have any opinions on this, but phonetics, phonetics is the right way to go.
Right. Oh my gosh. And it is like lifelong damage. Like, still, I was sitting with my 5-year-old yesterday practicing her sounds, getting ready for kindergarten. And she knows them all. But then I was going to explain something. And I was like, I had to go and look at like the other page and be like, yes, okay, I am right. Like, I've taught 4 children how to read, and I still work with kids in reading. And I still have to remind myself because I was taught whole language. Sorry for this
Not your
whole
fault.
divergent.
Yeah, not your fault.
Let me make the end of this podcast episode about me.
No.
So, but but thank you. It does get me excited. Like books like this. They just because it helps me feel identity too, that I'm like, yeah, people think different and they are different and that's good and that's wonderful. And let's see that and embrace it. And like you were saying, that these two books are so similar. Yet so different. Like somebody would pick up one and be like, well, I'd read them both. But it's like, no, there's so much going on. So thank you for bringing this to the world and then keep sharing about neurodiversity and doing the novels in verse because these are so important. Seeing that white space and making it more accessible for readers. Just thank you for your work, Meg. It's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you, Karen.
I hope that you enjoyed hearing about The Girl in the Walls by Meg Eden Kuyatt. If you like my podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could take a minute and rate and review BookHuddle on your podcast platform. That will help more people to find BookHuddle. Now go and have a fantastic week and read some amazing books.